continue.
Right. Now
Okay.
that's all you, Alan.
Yeah, thank you very much for that introduction, Jen, and thank you very much, everybody, for coming along. Today, we're going to talk about audio and how we can use that, or how it is used in a heritage context. And although I will probably be talking too much in this over the next 2.5 hours, you're very much welcome to contribute. I mean, my name's Alan Miller. I'm from the University of St Andrews, and I've been involved in doing digital heritage projects over the last 12 to 15 years, really, which has taken me around the world, and it's also taken me lots of lovely places in Scotland, including the Western Isles and Orkney and Shetland, the Borders, Edinburgh, not so much Glasgow as yet. That's kind of like on the agenda for the future. So we've done quite a lot of different stuff. And I think that using audio is often something that is underestimated. It's a great way of communicating. Obviously, we spend a lot of time communicating through audio, but it's something that we can get onto devices like iPhones or different sorts of phones. We can communicate over the internet. We can record and listen to it as we're listen to a podcast as we're doing as I'm doing my daily 6 o'clock run, which I did do, but that was back in 1995. So, but yeah, so it's very accessible, and also it can be very, very communicative, and often is underestimated when making exhibits and exhibitions. Audio can be a private thing that we get through headphones, or it can be a public thing that is in a shared space, adding atmosphere and so on. But within the context of digital doors, or doing doors open events, I think that we can certainly use audio in its own right, in a podcast, or as part of a virtual tour, to really increase the impact and the effect of work that is being done. So what are we going to look at today? We're going to look at some examples. I'm going to look at some examples, and I have to say, it's great to get your input. I mean, it'd be really exciting. I mean, both in the chat, and also, you feel free to talk as well, to hear about good examples of use of heritage, or of audio in communicating heritage, or resources that you know about. Last week we had some really nice suggestions about things that we could be used for manipulating and working with images. And what we hope to do is, so it's great to get your feedback. I do all sorts of different stuff to do with digital and heritage, so I'm not specifically an audio person. So I would be really surprised if there weren't people in this who know more than me about a whole bunch of different things. So it's good to get your input. Good to get your input into this. We'll look at some examples. We'll have a quick trot through sound, compression and perception, and look at some of the different formats that are available for working with, just to give us a bit of background. I hesitate to say theory. And then using sounds. Using sounds, so we'll look at how we can reuse sounds that already exist, or have already been recorded. We'll look at the process of recording sounds and how we can do that efficiently and effectively, and then a bit upon editing sound. So how we can take sounds and cut them, copy them, combine them to make podcasts, or to make other audio tracks, which may also then become part of a video. We'll look at some of the things that we can do to process sounds, process recordings that we've made to improve them, and then at some examples of podcasts and sharing sound. So that's the sort of menu that we've got, and also we'll look at different resources. And while we're doing that, after we've looked at the examples, we're going to kind of like break up into groups briefly, so that everybody, we can all introduce each other, have a chat, and think about what subjects we would like to develop heritage sounds around. And when we've done the processing, this is assuming that everything goes to plan. When we've done the processing, we'll then also break and talk about what sort of projects, how we can use sound in projects. So we'll have a break about the subject and then break about what to do. So I hope that sounds okay. As I say, my name's Alan Miller from University of St Andrews. My colleague Catherine Ann Cassidy is also in the group. So say hi, Catherine. And
hello.
Hi. And she will be, correcting me when I make mistakes, and adding some of her great experience to the workshop. And also we have Ian Oliver, who has, oh, hi Ian.
Hello.
And Ian does a kind of system side things. And so you may find that you interact with them in the chat while I'm talking. So that's great if there's stuff going on the chat. One of the things that Ian is doing and that we're trying to do is to put together some galleries and some digital heritage coming out of these workshops. So if you felt like sharing images or stuff about your heritage or any of these things with Ian, he'll be able to start creating an archive and putting those things together. So we hope to have something to show out of this series of workshops. But of course, there's no obligation on you in that direction at all. So by way of introduction and looking at examples, sound is important in its own right. There are lots of really exciting heritage sound projects. Podcasts in particular over the last year to 2 years have really grown up. But I think right at the top, it's worth saying, sound isn't this homogeneous thing. There's kind of like different types of sounds and different ways in which we can use sounds. So I wanted to kind of like just flag a couple of those. So the first is we can create a soundscape. So these are a series of sounds that you would be likely to hear in everyday life. The sea crashing on the beach, seagulls above you, the sound of a church bell ringing, the clatter of an ironmonger working their iron, sounds in the street, a chat in a pub, whatever it may be. And these sounds can be really, really helpful in terms of setting a scene, in terms of creating an atmosphere, and often being combined with other things, whether it be other sounds or whether it be with some video, or whether it be exploring in a 3D virtual environment, doing virtual time travel, whatever activity we're engaged in, that soundscape can be a great thing to use. And it's something that we can create either by going out and recording, the sea or whatever it happens to be, whether we go out and recording or whether we can source soundscape sounds from elsewhere and bring them in. So that's one. So that's a soundscape. The second is, I say background, but kind of like music. Again, this can be very, very helpful to put a music track down to do the introduction or to finish off at the end and then fade it down to maybe have a narrative that takes place that's telling a story or is interactive. So that's kind of like to think about not just sound, but to think about using the different sorts of sounds that there are and how we can create them. And what we want to be able to do is to isolate them and mix them together in different ways. So I just wanted to kind of like flag up a few examples of, so Scotland Sounds is a great resource. And I think that I'm going to just stop sharing because I don't think I shared my computer sound. So I'm going to stop sharing and then start sharing again, I hope. So share screen and share sound, optimize for video clip, share, because I think it's worth playing this clip. So it's a very nice, I think, example of a project that uses sounds, and it's using sound to kind of communicate.
Scotland's past.
It's a marvellous view, isn't it? What have we got in front of us?
We can see it,
In front of us
we can
this
touch it,
hill called Civic.
and we can hear it. Listen.
Since I was a boy, language in Cromarty has changed completely. Everybody in the Cromarty now are talking like Indonesians.
When I was a boy, a 10-year-old, I walked the 14 miles from Derby to Forest to see Broncoball's Great Wild West Circus, and the 14 miles back afterwards barefoot.
So we decided to take action, and we took our children down to the LDC offices and say, we're going to leave them here with you until you give us some hope that the children are going to have a playgroup. And they said, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. And we said, yes, we can.
Rannisin Stone var givet mig stage number 1 always bagan tojo. Smiden till jag kan se det kan det vara triet.
Scotland's audio archives go back more than 100 years.
And then somebody burst in and said the war's over. That was 1918, of course.
And our sound recordings are as diverse as our people.
People used to often say to us, "Are you two sisters?" And now people would be more likely to say, "Are you both partners?"
If you like the sound of Scotland's past, pass it on.
Okay, so that's just an example of a project that's been using sounds in really nice ways to convey meaning and to convey atmosphere. And Scotland's sounds also helps collect together sounds, so you can use.
These are the Verbo holiday homes waiting for you to fill with your family.
There we go.
Your together awaits.
That's
Find
the
it
wonder of
with
YouTube
Verbo.
and forgetting to switch it off. There we go. It's gone now. So that's Scotland's. Excuse me. That's Scotland's sounds. And then moving on. So West Highland Museum have done a great podcast called Beyond the Cattle Grid. And this really,
we're not seeing your PowerPoint. Just FYI.
You're not
it's
seeing my
another
PowerPoint.
Screen. No.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
It's good to get feedback as we go along. I mean, it would be terrible to have got the feedback, afterwards. We went through the whole session and never saw any of the images or any of the PowerPoint for it. Did you saw the video though? Hopefully.
No, it's just the audio. Just thought it was an audio thing.
Okay. Well, there's a nice video that goes with it. I'm sorry about that. You see me now?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. I don't know what I did. So I'm just clicking through to the podcast, and when I share the video, the audio, you'll be able to the PowerPoint, you'll be able to click through to it as well. So that's illustrating the kind of accessibility that we have. And this is a project that I was involved with Anne Crobb in Gaelic place names, where we created a map, and the map has on it lots of different place names in in Gaelic, and if I could just go in here, I can just click on one. Some of them have got stories associated with them, and I can hear that. You probably can't, but if you go to this, Ian, if you could put that URL into the chat, that would be really helpful, and then people could just go and have a little look at the map if you so fancied doing so. And so there's different stories and place names associated. So that's great. And then this is a lovely project as well. Our Story Scotland. So this is a oral history, putting across some of the experience of growing up and living in Scotland from a lesbian, gay plus perspective, which should be great to have a look at and follow the links to. And then this is a Old Oban project, which gives us perspectives on the history of Oban from an oral history perspective. And I'm sure that, and it would be great that if you could have a think about what audio projects you think are great that other people would be maybe interested in having a look at, and pop that into the chat, or indeed feel free to chime up and have a chat about it. And I think what's going to happen next, having just kind of like looked at some examples, just going to split into groups, and so we can have a chat about well, Jen actually has, I think, has something to say to us about
yes
that.
So what we're going to do is just do a little breakout rooms with maybe about 4 or 5 people in them each. So it gives us a little bit of space to talk. So just for 10 minutes. So just reflecting on that first bit and some of the examples that Alan showed us, just thinking about maybe when audio or sound has enhanced or detracted an experience. You know, if you've been to a heritage site or a historical museum, or just sort of reflecting on maybe your own project or your property, whatever it is that you're working on at the moment. And again, this just gives us space, because there are so many of us in these smaller groups, to talk maybe about a few examples that you really like, or maybe it's a project you've already done or something that you want to be doing. Because throughout, just in the back of your mind throughout this afternoon, we just want to think, is there a project that you really want to use to utilize sound in? So just to start us off, again, just think of maybe good examples or bad examples where sound has been incorporated, right? And you can sort of, again, just have a chance to share your own project and the stuff that you... Hello? Is everybody... Almost everybody's back.
Well, I had a good chat about, we talked about guides, we talked about sounds in churches, and we talked about governed shipyards, and whether it was possible to recover the lost soundscapes of a Glasgow shipyard. Which was fascinating.
Excellent. What else? Did anybody else have any particularly interesting highlights that anybody would want to put either in the chat or actually to talk to us? Turn your audio on.
Our group had mentioned copyright in various sound recordings, and the possible benefits in recording your own audio tracks for copyright.
Yeah.
Hi, Mary. I think that, sorry.
No, sorry, Alan, go ahead. I was going to say that, yeah, I think Alan's going to cover some of that.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to talk about a little bit about intellectual property and copyright. I mean, it's pretty similar. for written stuff, but it's certainly the case that a lot of existing audio sources are in copyright, and consequently, if you're going to use them, you either need permission or you're probably better off not using them. But there are open source or free to use resources that you can access, and as you say, if you've recorded something yourself, then there's not going to be any issues for you, although there may be for other people, depending upon whether you decide to let it be shared or whether you want to keep copyright.
Yeah, we at Burnt Island Heritage Trust, we've been over about the past 10-12 years, we've been recording interviews with older people in the town with the reminiscences. We have 20-30 recordings, but I'm looking at being able to turn them into a podcast so they're more readily available. At the moment, they're really only available on our own computer. That I'm looking at trying to broaden that out. I haven't really looked into how to create a podcast, but I imagine it's something similar to our YouTube channel. But again, I would like more information on how to produce a podcast.
So, sorry, Alan. Does that raise data protection question as well? If they're still living individuals, if they given him express consent, that kind of thing.
It's interesting that you raised that, and I do think that if you're going to record people for an oral history, and you have some idea that you're going to want to publish this in some way or make it accessible to the public, either as a podcast or in some other way, then you should try and get their express consent for that. So you should, when you do it, it's a good idea to have a standardized form. I don't know, Jen, does Scottish Civic Trust have standardized forms for that sort of thing? I mean, we could certainly
I mean, we don't personally, because to be honest, we don't do a lot of, for example, oral history type interviews. We use consent mostly for like photography. So sound isn't something that I've worked a lot in. We have, however, you mentioned Our Story Scotland. We've partnered up with Our Story on a number of projects, and I think they would have sort of wonderful advice about the ethics and the consent forms that go along with recording oral histories. I don't know if anybody else in the group here today has had experience with that sort of thing.
Hi, I'm from the Antonine Bull, and yes, we had that. We've been recording a SoundCloud for a community group, and so with a professional audio company, and there's had a consent form that is exactly the same like for pictures or videos, and then saying that people sign it off and saying that they're happy for their voice to be recorded. I mean, they obviously came to be recorded anyway, but that it's then used in that project. So it's not too complicated to get.
So going forward, it's a good idea to, I mean, just to have a form which says, look, we're wanting to use this we're recording you and we're wanting to use this for publication in the future. Is that okay with you? And get them to sign it at the time that you do the recordings, and then store the form or the image of the form with the recording, so that even if you don't do it at the time that the recording is made, maybe somebody has some other project in a few years' time and they can get those things together. So But I think that yeah, doing a podcast is pretty straightforward, really. Once you've got a recording, and it depends a bit upon what. I mean, podcasts take a lot of different forms. So I'm just going to put a link into the chat for, I think I am, SoundCloud, which is, so you mentioned YouTube. Somebody mentioned YouTube. Sorry. Just trying to find.
I was doing something for the Bible, and I was looking at the back of the Bible, and it's got where you look up for copyright. So it's for the hymn book for churches.
Yeah.
Hymnary I use is Church Hymnary 4. So it's based in Sauchiehall Street in Glasgow. It's like in the 4th floor, and I think it's an arcade or something. I can't remember the name of the arcade in Sauchiehall Street.
Right. So, okay, that's good. So soundcloud.com. If you go to soundcloud.com, if you upload an audio file, you can create an account for free. You can upload an audio file to that account, and then you can share it to Facebook, and then you've got a podcast onto Facebook. And similarly, you say you've been, George, I think it is, you've been uploading things to videos to YouTube. One of the things that we'll do next week is we'll look at combining together audio tracks with images or other video tracks, putting those together. So if you've got an audio track and you've got a photograph, just put the two things together, and then you can upload it to YouTube, and you've got a podcast on YouTube, just as straightforward as that, and then you can share it in the different.
I'm not too bad with the technical side of it, but when we get into using it along with social media, that's where I get a bit confused. Probably due to my age, but I can use these things, but I get a bit confused when it gets to sharing them around the various social media sites. And what do I use? Do I use Facebook, or do I use some of the other ones? You know, what are the best ones to use?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, all our people who are in the heritage at the moment are all over 70, so it's really managing to keep up with it. But apart, we have all the stuff. It's just finding out what to do with it.
That was the other question our group had, Alan. Is there a best package of software, if you like? We mentioned Audacity.
Yeah.
We've heard SoundCloud. We've heard Guidigo. There's more information on the different packages of different software rather available. Might be helpful.
Okay, I mean, it's great that you mentioned that, and you know, there are lots of different packages around, you know, ranging from free through to some that can be quite expensive with lots of different functionality. But I would recommend Audacity. I mean, if you're familiar with another package or have something else to use, then that's really fine. But Audacity is good for recording using a computer, and it's good for editing. So putting together different sounds and improving them and doing those sorts of things. So it's good for those two things. SoundCloud is like YouTube, but for sounds rather than videos, and so it's a good place to upload things and to kind of keep them there. But you can use SoundCloud to share to Facebook. And if you're using Facebook, if you've got a Facebook page or something like that, and you're connecting with people in that way, then that's a nice simple thing to do, is to record something, edit it in Audacity, upload it to SoundCloud, and from SoundCloud share it to Facebook, and people who are interested in your Facebook page can then get access to it. So I'm not sure that I would be confident in saying that's the best. It's certainly not the only, but it is a kind of combination of things that work quite well together and will get your sounds, out there. So that would be the way that I would go if I was starting on this journey. I've got lots of sounds, I've got lots of recordings, I want to get them out there. That's a way of getting them out there. Check that you got the right permissions, edit them in Audacity, put them onto SoundCloud, share them with Facebook.
Yeah, and Emma has said in the chat as well, Anchor FM, specifically if you were looking at podcasts, is a good free podcast recording and distributing website, if anybody's had any experiences with that.
Well, it would be good. I mean, if you have any tips on packages to use or what your favorite, it would be nice to hear about that in the chat. We could kind of check them out. Anchor FM isn't something that I've heard of before, so that probably means that it's very popular and everybody's using it. But that's great. So who was it who told us about that?
That was Emma.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you very much for that. So I was going to chat a little bit about sound and how it works. I'm not sure. It's a little bit of a detour from where we had got to, because we were more onto the sharing. But I think I will say a few things about it if it's okay with you. So sound in itself is all about a conversion of energy, vibrations in the air, and it becomes denser and less dense. It's how we hear sounds, compression of the air, and this takes place at frequency. So there's a speed at which the compressions and decompressions take place. So we, as in human beings, can generally hear between about 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz. So that's 20 cycles per second and 20,000 cycles per second. As we all get older, we can hear less. But that's all quite nice, because it means we can represent this compression and decompression. We can represent it as waves, so we can kind of like visualize it, seeing the frequency with which they're changing and the depth, the size of those waves. We can look at sound as well as listen, as well as listening to sound. But what we need to do with the sounds is we need to, when we're doing recording, we need to do analog to digital conversion, ADC, analog to digital conversion. And what that essentially means is that we measure the frequency and the scale of the sound. So we take samples regularly. So we can maybe CD sound. It takes a sample 65,000. Sorry, it takes a sample 44,000 times per second. And that's not just a random number. The reason why it's 44,000 times per second on a CD is because that's twice the frequency of what we can hear. And if we record things at twice the frequency that we can hear, that just makes sure that there's no sound effects, sound artifacts are created. So that's a function of our hearing. There's no point really in recording at faster levels. And then we then take these samples of the level of sound and we put them into, return them into digital form. And the way in which we do that is, for example, if we've got 16 bits for each sample, that gives us 65,536 different levels. If we have 8 bits, that gives us 256 different levels. So we pick whatever level it is that corresponds with it. So we take samples at a rate, we take measurements for those samples, and then we round them to one of the levels that we have. And that's really all there is to it. What happens is the air compression and decompression moves a diaphragm in our ears, which is what makes us hear. But in a microphone, it moves a diaphragm in a magnetic field that generates an electronic current. The electronic current is a wave. That wave is the size of the wave is measured, and samples are put in. So that's how it all works. And then this takes up a lot of space, though. So if you've got a CD, okay, you can get about maybe 20 tracks onto CD. Okay, so that's about 700 megabytes for that, or it takes about 30 megabytes per track for about 3 minutes of audio, which is quite a lot. But we can do a lot. We can compress that a lot, and the way in which we compress it is this we use a psychoacoustical model. Okay, so we can't hear well low frequencies, we can't hear well high frequencies, so the stuff we can't hear gets thrown away. So we only record the stuff that we can hear, and that means that we can reduce the amount of space that we need by a factor of 10. Okay, so if you look at MP3 compared to video, if we look at MP3 compared to CD or PCM, then we get 10 times as much stuff in any one bit of space. So there's these 3 formats: MP3, PCM, and OGG. MP3 is motion picture level 3, so it's the soundtrack that was used with DVDs, level 3 sound. PCM is pulse code modulation, and so WAV format is pulse code modulation, so that's uncompressed Microsoft format. CDs are PCM, and FLAC is PCM. So it's high quality recording, no compression, but takes up a lot of space. And OGG is very similar to MP3. OGG Vorbis is very similar to MP3, but is license free. It has free licensing, which means that it can be used. It means if you're writing audio applications, you can use OGG Vorbis code without having to worry about licensing effects and whether you're owing somebody else some money. So that's just a really quick overview of sound and of how it works, which brings us back round to so at that point in time, I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, or ask any questions, or challenge any of my approximations. It would be great if anybody wanted to say anything at that point. So yeah.
Thanks, Alan. I just thought it was interesting because I do not know any of the technical background about sound. So I think just getting a sample of what all of that entails is interesting. It's not something I'm, going to do myself, but I like understanding what's behind it.
Okay. I mean, it does. So it does have a practical implication. So the one practical implication is that, but by using this acoustic model, it means that MP3s often sound as good as CDs, but they take up 1/10 of the space. So that's why it's a good idea to use MP3s or the OGG Vorbis, a compressed format, when you're putting things into a podcast or when you're putting things onto the web, because it's going to reduce the latency. It's going to reduce the amount of time that people are waiting for things to load. It's going to make it less likely that it stutters and more likely that it works. However, although the compression tries to throw away stuff that we can't hear, every time you do a compression, you're messing with the sound a little bit. So it's a good idea, if you can, to record things in an uncompressed format. It's kind of like as pure as possible. And then when you're working with them, so when you're creating tracks and cutting them and trying to get rid of the noise or putting on an echo or doing all of that sort of stuff, work with the original uncompressed one. When you've created the thing that you want to publish, then put the compression onto it. So you work with it as a WAV format, for example, and then when you're happy with it and you're wanting to publish it, save it as a MP3 or as an old Vorbis and publish it that way. I think that that's the sort of main thing about the tech side of things that affects what you do and how you kind of work with it. But yeah, so thanks for that, Jen. As for using sounds, which I think is the next thing that we can cut, and that's something that kind of came up quite a lot. So here's the first thing, the slide is that this is all very similar to what it would be with images or in other things. Okay, so the thing to understand is that when we, well, there's two things. So the first is that if you're recording other people, taking photographs of other people and publishing them, you should try and get permission. If you can't get permission, I mean, in the sense that if someone did it years and years ago, but you can't contact them, then they kind of become an orphan work. And so you have some potential for being able to use that if you genuinely can't get in touch or don't know who they are or something like that, then the world is becoming more tolerant of that scenario. But you should certainly put out disclaimers and say things. And if they're alive, or if you know who owns their estate, then you should get in touch with them and try and get permission. Try and get some sort of permission from them. Certainly let them know. So that's the first side of things. Then the other side of things is to do with intellectual property, and this is a bit. It's not really the fun bit of working with heritage, shall we say it like that? But I think that the way to look at this is that there's a kind of growing movement, which is public domain and Creative Commons. And that's all about creating shared resources. It's about people making things and putting them into the public domain so that other people can use them, and so that you can use things that are in the public domain and bring them back. And I think that I would encourage people to make use of public domain and Creative Commons resources, and also, where possible, add to those so that other people can make use of them. Now, I understand that in some cases we may consider heritage to be very, very personal, and we don't want or belonging to a community and not wanting it to be exploited or made use of, particularly in situations and scenarios where there are power relations involved. So if somebody really powerful makes use of the public domain to make lots of money from some piece of heritage that belongs to some community which isn't in a powerful situation, that's not good, and something that needs to be guarded against and prevented against, and there are codes of practice and so on. And actually the World Intellectual Property Organization has things to say about that. But generally, sharing seems to help the world go round, and there's quite a consensus in the EU and other circles, UNESCO, United Nations and so on, that this is a good thing to be encouraged. So we can put things into the public domain, or we can put licenses on them, Creative Commons licenses, which say things like, you can use this provided you give attribution. You say that it was me that I did it, or you can use that made it, or you can use this, but you need to make sure that you share it in the same way as I shared it with you. So you can't then slap your own license on it and try to make lots of money out of it. Or you can use this, and I don't mind if you change it, or you can use this, but please keep it the same. There's a sort of range of different licenses that are available, and the same principles apply, I think, when we're coming to sound. And the thing is that when there's when a creative act takes place, like when you make some audio, or you write something, or you paint something, when that creative act leads to something which is fixed, i.e. words on a page rather than in the head, i.e. pixels of an image after a photograph has been taken, or a recording of sound, when there is something that is fixed, that is a result of a creative process, then intellectual property is created, and that intellectual property belongs to the person who fixed it, to the person who did the recording, to the person who took the photograph, to the person who wrote things down, and so on. Okay, so in general, so once there is intellectual property in existence, then you are entitled to share that. So you can then license it to other people to be able to use, or you can keep the copyright yourself. And so this is why somebody said, when you're working with sound, you have to be very careful, because a lot of sounds are owned by people. People make a lot of money from sounds, from music and the like, and you can't just go, oh, let it be, that's the soundtrack that I want for my piece of heritage. I'll pull that off Spotify and put it onto my video. Well, you can do that, but you better not show anybody else it. Or if you try and upload it to YouTube, you'll find that YouTube goes, no, they've got algorithms that will search through all of their videos looking for these sorts of infringements. But there are a lot of sites that are free sound resources. So if we go to Wikipedia here, we can see a bunch of places with music and with sounds, and of course anything that you record yourself, anything that you make yourself, you have copyright over, so you can use them. So that's free sound. Scotland Sounds Network, we can go and look there. Tuba Adushas is a great sound resource. You would need to check the rights on each of them before using them, but it's a great sound resource, and lots of great things relevant to Scottish history you want to have a look at, and there will be others as well. So again, in the spirit of collaboration, if anybody knows of any great resources for sounds to do with Scottish history or other history, then please do pop it in the chat, and we'll try and collect them together and circulate them afterwards. Or if anybody wants to continue, feel free to chip in now about potential Creative Commons sound resources, or potential issues with using sound resources. But the essential idea here is there are a lot of sounds that exist. We can use those. Repackage them.
This isn't about sounds, Alan, but we did a workshop a few years ago in Paisley in partnership with Shop Mobility, and Disability Resource Center was there. And one of the sounds that they've used when they've created videos was songs from Moby. So I don't know if you're familiar with his music, which is quite ambient. It's like quite a good background. And the website that they use is Moby Gratis, and you go in and fill out a form and you just say what your project is. So this is particularly good for charities or small organizations. And you're more than not likely to be approved to use that music. So again, if you're looking for something that's sort of atmospheric and that isn't necessarily sound effects, but that was really interesting to me. And I know we've used a song in the past for Scottish Civic Trust, and I didn't know about that resource before talking to them.
Yeah, I was sure that I put that in the presentation, but it seems.
Well, it's
to have
okay. I'll
found its
pop it
way
in the
out
chat.
of
I'll
it.
pop the link.
Moby Gratis. Good. Yeah, please do. And you can also, you know, write to the Proclaimers and ask them if you can use their song in your thing. I mean, they can only say no, or they can say yes. If they say yes, then you can use it. You can always ask permission to use stuff. And working in the heritage sector in education and stuff like that, and particularly if you know it's a not-for-profit thing that you're doing, you may well have a good chance of somebody saying yes to you if there's something iconic that's kind of related to your piece of heritage. So that's great. Thank you for that thing about Moby Gratis. And I think that there's, if you're looking for classical music or something like that, you're likely to find something without too much difficulty. How are we doing for time here, Jim?
Yeah, well, maybe would everybody like to have a quick break, a comfort break? Shall we all go get our fresh cups of tea and coffee and biscuits? Should we do, is 10 minutes long enough for everyone? Shall we reconvene? What is it? 12, how about we'll round it up? We'll say at 2:30. Give us 15 minutes or so.
That's fine. Good.
Okay. So after we'll have a break, and then Alan, you still have some more material to get through, and then we will after that have a second breakout session, just to give everybody a idea of what's left for the day. Okay.
Existing audio tracks and the like that can be used, but also presumably that there's interest also in doing the recording. And the thing is that the resources that we have available to us are increasing year in year. I mean, the capabilities of phones now is huge, and we can use a phone as a kind of mobile recording studio, particularly if we put it onto a tripod or something similar and connect it with connect it to a microphone. But so talk a little bit about recording sound, and I think that I mean, in a sense that we're all sat at computers now. I presume, maybe not all. Maybe some of you are on. Maybe that's a poll we could do. How many people are on, computers? How many people are on phones, and how many people are on tablets? Maybe. I would be interested to know. And we were trying to think of something to use polls for, so that might be a good thing. So, but we want to record sound, and we want to make use of that sound. And so we can do it on a computer, we can do it on a phone, or we can do it with a recorder. But in every case, we're going to have to use a microphone. And this is essentially how a microphone works. We've got an electromagnetic pickup. There's physical movement that takes place, which creates an oscillating magnetic field. And the microphone then may have high frequencies in it, which we can filter out before sampling takes place. But the kind of key thing that we want to do, I think, when doing a recording, is we want to make sure that, first of all, no clipping takes place. Okay, so clipping is when the sounds are too loud for the equipment that you're recording with. And that's about the worst thing that can happen, because there's often not much a way to recover from clipping, because it means that we essentially have part of the sound missing. I will just... Can you see my PowerPoints?
Yes, I can see them.
Yes,
Great, that's great. I just had a moment of self-doubt there. Where is it? Yeah, this is clipping here. We see the clipped waveform where we've not managed to. When you're doing a recording, you know, on a recorder, often you have these levels that go up and down. And when they go into the red, that's when clipping is taking place. So that's the thing that we want to avoid happening. So we need to try and turn down the sensitivity if we find that we're going into the red a lot. At the other side of the scale, you know, if the level's not high enough, we're going to have difficulty separating out the recorded signal from the noise, from background noise and so on. So we really want to be recording just at the level just before the clipping takes place. So this is the first thing. Then when we're doing a recording, we want to have some way of knowing how close we are to clipping or not. Now, most apps that you use will show you that, and Audacity certainly will show you it if you use it. So then the second thing is that we want to record at the right level, and we want to isolate the sound. So this is a really obvious thing to state. You know, we want to record. There's something that we want to record, and we don't want to be recording other stuff. And so we want to get that sound or sequence of sounds recorded and nothing else. So that might mean, for example, you know, we want to create separate tracks. So if there's sort of narrative, and if there's sound, and if narrative, music, and soundscape, we perhaps want to record those separately so that they're isolated. And what that means is that we can then manipulate them individually and mix them up the way that we want to mix them up. Sometimes it's not possible to do that. So if you're like standing in the middle of a concert and you don't have access to the mixing desks, do you record stuff on your phone? So that's great, but you can't mix it. What we really want to do is to isolate, record just the stuff that we want to record, and to record it onto separate tracks. Now we can do this. The easiest way to do this is to record the different things at different times. Okay, so you know, record the music, record the sound, record the soundscape, record them at different times. The other way we can do this is by using different microphones. So some microphones are good at isolating, so they will only record from a particular from a particular direction. And we can also do this by having the microphone, pointing it in the right direction, or having it really close to the sound. So if we're using our phone to record, the microphone on a phone to record, then having it close to the person, it's going to help with the isolation process. Okay. So this is where, but the environment can also be important. So, I mean, I know it's like kind of like stating the obvious, but you want to probably do it in a quiet room. You want to record in a quiet room, preferably with some sort of soundproofing. This is why people, you know, recommend, if you're doing your first podcast with your iPhone, that you kind of get under your bed covers and do the recording there. It's providing isolation and providing a nice or acoustic environment environment for that. So choose a room that there's not a lot of external noise for, and do the recording and the recording in that. So to isolate the sound you want, so that, you know, choose an appropriate environment, record one thing at a time. Once you've recorded things, then consider cleaning the tracks independently, and then you can then mix them together to create the thing that you want to create. So that might be as simple as you've got some oral history, you want to turn it into podcasts. So you take your oral history that's been pre-recorded, and maybe you record an introduction to it, maybe you record an ending to it, and then you have a track with some music at the beginning and at the end, and maybe you put some sort of soundscape across the bottom of it, and you've taken a vanilla recording and done something, an existing recording, and done some things in it, packaged it in ways that people will associate with broadcasts, and then distribute it to people as a podcast. So that all starts with isolating the sound that you want. So in order to do this, maybe a good way forward is to try and make a studio around a PC or around a computer. Now it is great to use phones, but particularly for like the video stuff, right? But often, you know, if you're doing recording outside, the isolation process is difficult, okay, because of wind. So wind can be quite, you know, you can be fighting with the wind, and that can create a bad set of sounds that interfere with what you're trying to record, or traffic, or, you know, all of these other things. So if you can, for recording the sound, I think it's best to try and do that in an environment that you have control over, and that will often mean inside. And so you can often build a studio around your PC and or around your computer. So you need to choose somewhere that is quiet. You need your computer to do that. And then you just add to your computer a microphone. Now, the most simple thing to do is to get a USB microphone, plug the USB microphone into the computer and use that. And that's going to greatly improve. I mean, even if you've got a laptop with its own microphone on it, using a USB microphone, even a not great USB microphone, if what you're doing is you're recording audio and you're recording people talking, or you're wanting to put a commentary on top of a video, or any of those, or associated commentary with a photograph, any of those things, adding a USB microphone will
Alan, is that what you're using today? Somebody had the question that your audio sounds quite good. Is that the type of kit that you're using at the moment?
What I'm using is I'm using a condenser microphone, which is here.
Now I'm going to make you mess up your setup.
It's okay. I think it's okay. If it's not, I will just hold a grudge forever. I won't. I just need to tighten that a little bit. There you go. So this is a condenser microphone. So I just have it kind of rigged up. So that's it there. It's a audio technical condenser microphone. It's not hugely expensive, but it maybe cost about £100 when it was new, which was an awful long time ago. But I prior to using this, I was using USB mic, which worked pretty well. That plugs into a Focusrite interface, If it go quiet, all of a sudden you'll know why. Which is this. It's not actually very clean. You can see that. One of those things, which similarly cost about £80. But to be honest with you, if I was using a decent USB mic, I'm not sure that you would be able to tell the difference between that and the thing that I've got at the moment. Catherine, are you using a USB mic?
I am. So
Do you want to make some noise?
how now, brown cow? Yeah, I mean, this is the same brand as yours. It's newer, but it is just a USB plug, so you don't need the interface, and you just can hook your micro or your headphones right into it, and then right into the back of your computer. So I know that sometimes when it's on and I don't have anything to listen to, I can hear myself because I think the mic is always on. It picks up quite a lot, more than maybe you want.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because back in the days when people were kind of like figuring out how to do audio streaming and video streaming, and quality of service was an issue because of bandwidth on the internet and the power of computers and so on. We did a bunch of experiments, and what those experiments showed was people would put up with poor quality video much more than they would put up with poor quality audio. It's much more important to try and have high quality. So what, it's what you do when you're having a video conference, right? If you're having a video conference and it starts to go wrong, you turn the video off so that you can hear people. So audio is really quite important in terms of the sort of communication of things, and it's like, so if you're writing an application to do some work, to do a project or something like that, then spending a bit of money on audio equipment, I think, is well worthwhile doing. Did that answer your question? So the setup I've got is a condenser mic, a sort of, well, what do you call them? Pro, not sort of, it's a sort of interested, sub-pro, but sort of expert type equipment, not spending hundreds and hundreds and thousands of pounds, but enough to get good quality. Lavalier microphones are good as well, because they're the ones that you kind of put into your clothing or something, so that they're close to where you are. USB mics, great, and you don't have to have the interface and all of those sort of things, and also they work well with laptops, so you can put them in the laptop bag and move them around. Good for streaming, and dynamic mics for live recording. There's a link there which goes into more detail than anyone would need upon mics and the like. But that all being said, if you're getting good quality from your phone, then maybe that's good enough. That's good enough for you, and you don't need the stuff. So there's these different range of microphones, and the other thing that when you're doing recording is worthwhile doing is to be able to monitor it, right? So to be able to listen to what is being recorded, and for that you need a way of plugging in your microphone, plugging in a headphone, so that you can listen. Or you could have monitoring speakers but you want to be able to listen to it. And the thing is that it's easy to do the recording without listening. Okay, but if that is the workflow that you use, then bad things will happen. Okay, so you'll do a fantastic session, and then just find out afterwards that none of it was recorded, or that it wasn't plugged in properly, or that a wire broke, or that you were getting interference, or whatever it is. So I can't emphasize enough I mean, if you're happy for occasionally bad things to happen, then maybe it's fine. But it's a really good idea to monitor, to listen. And they're the headphones that I'm using. I'm not monitoring these. I just have these on, so I don't have my sound turned down so that I'm not causing air pollution for other people in the house. So they're not necessary for video conferencing. But if I was recording, then it'd be good for monitoring. And the thing with monitoring headphones is you don't necessarily want to spend millions of pounds on it, and you don't want the sort of really jazzy ones that put the zip into the music and all of that sort of stuff. You just want flat, neutral headphones that are kind of most accurately portray what it is you've recorded. I mean, a lot of headphones try to make the music sound better than it was as it was recorded. So there are specific kind of monitoring headphones. So if you're into doing the recording, it's worthwhile getting monitoring headphones that have a natural response. So, and then you need software to be able to be capturing this too. And there's lots of different software that's available. I would recommend Audacity. It's very good. It's free. It's cross-platform, so that means that, you know, if you're working with yourself and somebody else is working, and you know, you can all use the same software, right? Whether they've got a Mac or a PC or anything else. So it's worthwhile doing that. So it's fun. Everyone should have Audacity on their computer. It doesn't take up a huge amount of resources. Why not have it? If you're not using a USB microphone, or if you've got, you know, from your days as a rock star or whatever, you know, good quality microphones already, or you inherited them something, or you just happen to have some for other purposes, you can get an interface like this. Focusrite are quite good. That's a Scarlett, and that lets you plug the microphone into the interface and plug the interface into the computer. It can be quite expensive if you're having to buy the interface and the microphones. But you know, if you've got microphones, then that's not going to be much more expensive than buying a good USB mic. Again, if you're doing an application for a project, why not put some stuff in for that, and you're starting to build up a studio that you can work with. Okay, so that's my Alan's tips on recording. May well be that other people will have some good tips, or that there will be some things that I've missed out that you would like to mention. Yeah. So we'll just move on then. Editing. So this is the magical thing, right? Is that you've all used a word processor, right? And what you do in a word processor is you put stuff down. So we've done that. That's the recording. So that the editing, you select, you cut, you copy, and you paste. Okay. And you can do all of those things and more with audio, because we've got it in a digital form. We can just select stuff, copy it, and paste it elsewhere. I was watching what was I watching? Silent Witness. I started watching them from the beginning in 1996, and they had an episode where somebody fooled the team by getting tapes, cutting them up and splicing them together and playing them, right? So this was like, wow, how can anybody do that? How would we have imagined that was something that people could do? But now that's just like, you know, what everybody does. It's mundane. It's easy. It's so simple. So really, editing video, editing audio is so easy. So what you need to do is you need to load a file in. So this is me loading a file in. when you load a file in to Audacity using your file system, so you select the file and you load it in, this is an MP3 file, you can then see the file, you can see the sound wave here, okay? And you can play it at the same time. So you will see the point at which you're at by a red bar moving along, and you'll hear the sounds. And you can zoom in and you can zoom out, so you can see exactly where a sound is, exactly where a space is, and this enables you to select it. So you just drag over, select the thing, press Control-C, and you've copied it. Now that you've copied it, you can paste it, you can put the cursor where you want it to go in, and you can paste it in, or you can create a new track with it and mix them together. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Select, cut, copy, and paste in Audacity, and whatever it is that you've recorded, you can cut out the bits that you don't want. You can cut out the pauses, the stammers, the bits that you double recorded in order to get a better thing. You can cut those out, tidy it up. It's, you know, it's as easy as editing a Word document. It's, you know, and the good thing about Audacity and working with audio is you don't need a tremendously powerful computer. You don't need a special graphics card. You don't need, you know, you just need, you know, a computer that has been made in sometime in the last 10 years, and you can turn that into something that will be able to edit audio. So you select it, then you cut, you copy and paste. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to turn anybody into you know, a tremendous artist, because it's not just the technical things. There's you know, you need to have the psyche or the ability or what it is you're trying to do. But the mechanics of it, everybody can do that, and just a bit of practice and you can get on top of it in an afternoon, I'm absolutely sure. So select, cut, copy, paste, and then we can create new tracks. Okay, so this means we can have tracks for the audio, we can have tracks for the oral history, tracks for the background noise, tracks for the music. Just line them all up like that. File, create new track, and you're away for doing that. Okay, so and then once we've done that, once we've created our tracks, we've done our cut, copy, and editing, then we just choose to save, and we can choose to export, and you can see here we've got our WAV files, MP3 files, OGG, Vorbis, the things that we were talking about earlier on. And we could just save them as MP3 files, so they'll be a tenth of the size, and publish them as we like. Okay, so that's the sort of editing process. Alongside the editing process is the processing. We should probably do the processing before the editing. I just mentioned that. I've probably got these in the wrong order. So the most common thing here is amplification. Okay, so if you've got your music collection on SoundBee or some other thing and you play them, you'll notice that, you know, some tracks come out loud, some tracks come out quiet, but you can run over that and you can tell your system to equalize the sound levels, and that won't happen. So same thing with amplification. What you do is you just select the amplification effect from the effects menu, and then it will amplify your sounds up to the same level as everything else. So the loudest sound is the decibel level that's the loudest sound on all of the tracks, and that's quite a good thing to do, to make sure that everything kind of sounds at the same level. Okay, the second thing we can do is we can do noise reduction, and again, if this is an effect, we just select the effect. So the first thing we do for the noise reduction is we select a few seconds of just noise so that Audacity can adjust itself. So this means that when you're doing a recording, it's a good idea to record a few seconds of background noise without anybody speaking. Almost certainly that will happen if you've got any sort of conversation or spend any sort of time recording, but just make sure that you do. And then that background noise can be used to get rid of noise reduction. You then select all the audio you want filtered and just process it, and it will get rid of the background noise. Now, my advice would be, if there's no real need to do noise reduction, then don't, because it does damage the other sounds. Okay, so you can get rid of the noise, but it's going to degrade the rest of the sound. And you can turn up and down how aggressive the noise reduction is. So you want to have it as less aggressive as acceptable for getting rid of the noise. If you turn it up too high, it will sound quite nasty. But you can adjust the decibels and the sensitivity and the frequency at which it's banding, so you can play around with those. And it is magical. If there's a lot of background noise, you can get rid of that, particularly in the quiet periods, and so it can make a big difference. So it's a good thing to have there. Compressor does the same thing as the amplifier, except that where you've got some noises which are really loud and everything else is quiet, it reduces that dynamic range. Okay, so if for some reason you've got a really loud noise, which means that when you amplify stuff, when you amplify the track, it doesn't amplify much because of that really loud noise, you can fix that by using the compressor, which will reduce the difference between the highest noise and the rest of the noises. So if your amplification doesn't do what you want it to do, then it's worth looking at your compressor. That says noise reduction. Oh, why have I got? Oh. Oh, that's a trifle embarrassing because I gave the noise reduction speech whilst looking at the fade in and fade out. The fade in and fade out effect. But fade in and fade out is your friend. So this enables you to, as it says, fade in. So you can start off at silence and ramp and define how quickly it ramps up. And you fade out similarly. So this avoids your bang start and your bang end. But what it also means is what you can do is you can do your fade in. So you fade in your music, you listen to your music for a bit, and then you fade out the music and take it down to really low levels, right? Before the talking starts, and then the talking happens. Then you fade out the talking, fade in the music again to finish it off. So this is a good effect. It's a good effect for the editing when you're trying to mix together different tracks for it. Okay, so we want to use the fade in and the fade out, and so that's really it in terms of editing and processing. Well, I say there's an infinite amount more that can be done, but in my opinion, you know, that's 90 to 95% of what you would use on a day-to-day basis in order to put together podcasts, in order to put together tracks, in order to mix together different recordings and create some really nice effects for use in different contexts. So I would suggest, you know, £10 on a pair of headphones, £50 on a USB microphone, Audacity in terms of free software, and you're really set and ready to go to use your computer as an audio studio. podcasts and sharing. We've got here lots of examples of different podcasts that we can go and have a look at. But what I would say is that there's nothing really magical about a podcast. What you need to do is create your piece of sound, put it into I could call it a cultural context. But I mean, so podcasts work best, when you go, okay, every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, I'm going to publish a podcast, or every second Monday at 9 o'clock. So you have a regular broadcasting routine that helps people to, look forward to the up and coming podcast. Maybe you're not going to do it for the rest of life, but maybe you have a sequence of 4, or maybe you have a sequence of 10 that have some sort of common theme. So there's this sort of editorial side of things. The mechanics of it, we've been through how you can record and mix things together and create your podcast. Okay, I haven't talked about the content, but I haven't talked about the content really because you're the kings of content. You know how to talk to somebody about your heritage. You know what's interested in it about it. You know what the public find interesting about it. So you're going to be able to put together the stories that you want communicating. So once you've got your content, you've got the mechanics for creating the thing, then all you need to do really is to upload it. So Anchor, somebody suggested Anchor Me, so that's great. Anchor Me is the sort of proprietary thing from Spotify. So you just need somewhere to put it, and you need something called an RSS feed. Okay, so an RSS feed enables the thing that is publishing your podcast to get it and to get it to people. Anchor Me provides that. SoundCloud provides it as well, and other platforms provide it. So there's a lot of choice that is out there. Anchor Me is free, and SoundCloud is free. So you can, SoundCloud isn't just a podcast thing, it's also something for musicians and so on, but it has some nice features. So you can create an account, you can sign in, and then you just upload it. You upload the sound. Once you've uploaded the sounds, you can then add information about it. What's the title? What's the genre? Description? Is it supposed to be private or is it supposed to be public? Permissions, who's allowed to listen to it, under what conditions? Okay, and then you can upload the file. So you upload, drag and drop your albums there, and then you can share them. So this is an example of uploading and then sharing to Facebook, soundcloud.com, Hi Clover. And Facebook's a good place to go because a lot of people are comfortable in using it, and you can share it on from Facebook, obviously. But also, once it's on SoundCloud, you can then use it to make a podcast on Spotify. And there's a nice guide here that I'm going to point you out, and you just follow this set of instructions. So it's just a step-by-step thing. You put the device, you put the audio onto Spotify, onto SoundCloud. Once you put it onto SoundCloud, you get from SoundCloud the RSS feed, and you copy that. You then create an account on Spotify. You tell Spotify what the RSS feed is, and then your podcast will be on Spotify. So that's an overview anyway of doing a podcast from.
Hi, Alan. Sorry, can I ask a question? I just posted it on the chat there. It's Susan from Inverclyde here.
Hi, Susan.
Hiya. What is the difference then between SoundCloud that you're referring to and SoundTrap that I believe you have to pay a license for, but it's also a Spotify product?
Sound Trap.
Do you know what that is? I don't know. It's just, it was recommended to us to have a license for podcasts if the council was going to go down that avenue. But it sounds like you don't need that if you're using SoundCloud.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that you should be able to get you should be able to do podcasts without paying money. But if the council has a budget and they're paying and they have a preference for a certain platform, then you might be advised to go with that, particularly if there's people kicking about locally who know how that works.
Well, we haven't got it as yet or anything. I'm just trying to understand the difference now that you've referred to SoundCloud being free.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in? Having used Anchor FM, I went to a training about podcasting that Creative Scotland put on, and Perth Cultural Trust were speaking about having used Anchor FM. And Anchor FM is also owned by Spotify. Spotify, I think, buy up pieces of software that make it easy to make podcasts, because they are, the more interesting content there is available through Spotify, the more likely people are to subscribe to Spotify. So I think that's why they bought the software. But Anchor FM is very, very easy for people who aren't familiar with any of this tech. It's all free, and they distribute your podcast for you. They generate the RSS, they send it to Apple Podcasts, they send it to Google Podcasts, they send it to Pocket Casts, they put it on Spotify, and they make it really easy to have an intro and an outro, and they have copyright free music that you can use to have a jingly little identifiable beginning.
All right, okay.
And
that's free.
And that's free. And
great.
I suspect it's local authority approved because Perth museums use it. And
Right,
they made
okay.
podcasts about their Jacobite exhibition. So they were just sharing their news and views, and they got phenomenal numbers of clicks and interest in their podcast. So Anchor FM, I find Audacity quite hard to get my head around, and my editing isn't brilliant, but I find using Anchor really easy. It's all just click and drag, and very, very intuitive for people who aren't as used to audio editing software.
Lovely, right, that's great. Yeah, thanks very much for that. That's good to know.
You're welcome. Sorry for jumping in.
No, that's great. It's Anchor FM sounds like a good place to be to do. I'm always just a little bit cautious of things that are proprietary, but yeah. And it's great that you've been having some good experiences with that as well.
Well, the other thing for me is it was just a good way to keep up some sort of presence when we were all so locked down last year, and the stats are great because 13% of our listeners, I mean, it's not huge, but they're about Inverkeithing, but 13% of our listeners are in the United States, and that's
Wow.
really nice. And there's no way having a talk on a Wednesday evening we would ever have reached the United States.
No.
And we've got different countries in Europe and one or two in Asia, and somebody from Zimbabwe logged in once. They may not have listened to an entire episode, but they're in my list of countries that have listened. So it is a good way, if you've got heritage, of just getting it out there, and especially if a door's open. If somebody's interested or has a grandfather or a whatever, some relative, some reason to be looking around digitally on Doors Open, it's just a good way of hooking in their interest. And then what you do with those audiences next is kind of, it's up to you, but we're all here because we want to share our heritage. So yeah, it worked for me. Anchor.
Cool.
Alan, I don't know what you want to do with the content. We were going to have another breakout session, but do you actually want to just open it up for wider discussion? Since we are having some good discussion at the moment, does anybody else want to share some experiences? There's some good sort of peer tips going on here.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean,
so I think what we were going to ask was, when you think about your project or your property, whatever it is that you're working on, your piece of heritage, the story you want to tell, what kind of audio would help you tell that? So what kind of sounds? Is it music? Is it recorded narrative, sort of, verbal spoken poetry, or is it language, or is it a soundscape that you're trying to create? What would help you tell your story? Can you think of maybe an image, a visual of your interest, your project? How would you attach sound to it? What are the things, your aspirations? And would you be willing to share that wider with the group?
Hello, George McLaughlin here again from Untitled Heritage Trust. I was just thinking, it's only in the last 12 months that I've really looked at video and audio, and really only in the past 2 or 3 months that I've looked at audio on its own. We started putting a lot of our photographs together and putting them into slideshows using Photopia. And we're sort of moving on from there. And the slideshows required background music, as we didn't record a narration on them. That was really trying to get the proper music that didn't infringe copyright. But now that I'm looking at our audio collections and making some audio broadcasts ourselves, it really is a totally different soundscape that we're looking at, totally different from video and audio on its own. I was just trying to get my mind around that, but that's what I feel. Video has a different sound input as to what audio will have. That was a bit confusing.
I'm not sure that it was. I think it's a good point, and I think that yeah, that's good. Think of it like that. I mean, I think that when we come to next week, we were going to talk about using video, and part of that was going to be doing some of the things that you maybe thought about doing. There was kind of like bringing together the sort of audio skills or processes and mixing those with the image making, the photography processes, and also video processes to be able to make and edit videos. That's what we're kind of do next week. So I suppose, Jen, we were thinking about, so if there were kind of like, I don't know, but like particular piece of heritage, how could people think of like sort of mini projects, or what would you photograph, what would you record, how would you put it together, type thing?
Yeah, so for example, one of the things I've been thinking about, because we are based in the center of Glasgow at the Tobacco Merchants House, which is a historic house, and there's lots of reinterpretation that we're going to be doing, and specifically looking at the tobacco merchant links to slavery and being much more upfront about how the labor of enslaved people would have enriched the owners of that property. And I think once we get all of that, the sort of hard work on the historic interpretation done, all of that research done, is presenting that. And I think it would be really wonderful to have either a podcast about it or audio tours that you could do. So that's sort of what I have my eye on personally, is how I would go about doing that.
Jen, can I just say that that's one of the stops on the Merchant City tour that we did last year, the Hidden Stories thing.
Oh, brilliant.
So have a look at that. There'll be some audio of a small child talking about the history of the Tobacco Merchant House.
That's perfect. Is that Neil who's saying
Yeah,
that?
Sorry, my
Excellent.
video's off. Yeah,
I've bookmarked your tour and I haven't listened to it yet, so I will
Okay.
be doing that.
Give it a shot. For me, we're doing something with Langside Halls Trust this year, and we're going to be looking at reuse of old buildings. I think that's the theme. It's about sustainability and circularity. So we will be picking a bunch of buildings and talking about what they used to be and how they've changed to be what they are now. There's some good examples along the route that we're going to do, such as the tramway, for example, the hidden gardens, etc. So I can foresee that maybe being some soundscape stuff that sort of talks about how the building was before and what it was used for. So if it's an industrial building, we might have some noises that we obviously can't record now because the building isn't employed in that sense now. And then maybe some recordings of people that understood or were in the buildings or worked there or whatever, depending on how long ago we're talking about, obviously. So that's kind of the scene that's the sort of thing we'd be looking to do this year, I think, hopefully. I think for me then a stack of resources of places that we can find things like industrial sounds or things like that would be superbly useful out of this.
Yeah. I mean, a good place to look is Free Sound. Catherine, do you have something to say about where to look for samples and resources?
Yeah, I think there were some slides, but depending on where you're putting the audio, but Free Sounds is good for uploading as well. It's not so much music, but more ambient sounds. So as in you can become a user and upload your own recorded sounds of a forest, sounds of water, sounds of seagulls. And then the user can put what copyright they would like on it. But there's a lot of them that are in the public domain and free, royalty free to use. Also, same in line with those kind of audio files, you can go to Wikimedia Commons to search for a specific one, but not necessarily music. And then we talked about specific things like the Moby Gravis. And then if you're uploading and creating a video, that's going to go right to YouTube. YouTube has its own audio gallery of things that you can use. And there are different resources of artists that have royalty-free music that you can use. But yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you're putting something on that is not going to get yanked off, whether it's YouTube or Vimeo quite quickly. Because like Alan said, they do have algorithms to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, who is it from Fife? I can't remember, but you say you spent £107 on a USB mic stand, headphone, and podcaster package. I mean, that sounds pretty good. That sounds like the sort of price point to be at in terms of getting stuff of a quality for broadcasting out. Audacity does have a couple of quirks. The one thing that I kind of found difficult, and then once I kind of got over that, it became a lot easier. It's just that you can't cut, copy, and paste while you're playing something. So you just need to make sure that you're not. If you make sure that you're not playing, then all the functions kind of come back. So It's kind of like playing mode and editing mode. So if you're like trying to do the editing while you're in the playing mode, or playing while you're in the editing mode, it can become complicated. But I mean, otherwise, it should. You say techno-feared, don't be frightened. Anchor FM sounds great. One of the good things about Audacity is that it's kind of like outside of any particular ecosystem. So if you kind of do the editing in Audacity, then I've not used Anchor FM, so I can't comment on it. But you know, if you want to then punt it into a video editing suite, or punt it onto a particular social media, you can do that. You can push it to wherever you want. But equally, you've not got the sort of wizards that whiz it off magically. So maybe you get a bit more control, but you just have to spend a bit more time on it. But anyway. Sarah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, I think
Goodbye,
so we have a few minutes. I think the other thing, just very briefly as a quick sort of survey, when we're talking about all these projects that we have in mind, so as mostly small societies and grassroots groups, what do you need to do these types of projects? So is it something like this where it's just the guidance, or do you need more sort of hands-on walking through things? Like what I'm thinking of is, next year, do we try to design a workshop that's sort of a follow-up that's more in depth, or something like this appropriate with once you get all the printed resources? Like what level of support do you need? Or is it more you need grants and you need money to get equipment? In the comments, feel free to say yes.
Yeah,
yes,
hi.
all of that.
I would say practical experience of making any of these, making photographs, making videos, making audio tracks, and then be helped to try and put that into some kind of presentation. Well, obviously for next year, but I'm going to be attending all 6 meetings, but they're quite close together. So am I going to have time between now and next week to have looked at audio recording? Probably not, because I've got other things to do. Whereas if it perhaps a longer space and time earlier in the year, where we could be working 2 or 3 weeks on the audio and going away, doing a bit of homework, coming back, getting feedback from the rest of the group. Obviously, some people have more experience in audio than others. Some people have access to equipment, some don't. So maybe a longer period of time on each of the workshop sessions, so that we can get feedback from the experts and from each other. That would help me.
Okay. Yeah, and people are saying in comments, I think this is always a big one, isn't it? It's just capacity, because we're all quite often doing multiple roles, or maybe we're only part-time or in a volunteer capacity, and it's just having the time to do it. Like you said, is there time in between now and next week to go away and actually practice?
Yeah, I think it's worth. I mean, if you can spend a bit of time, I mean, taking some photographs or doing a bit of recording, it would be nice. But I mean, even if it's just kind of like touching, touching the subject rather than thinking you're going to get a huge way into it, but doing a bit of that would be nice. But maybe we can think about how we can address that, Jen. I don't know.
Yeah, it's something, again, your feedback. So you'll automatically get the feedback form. So anything like this that you want to put into those comments, so that we can think about how to, what we offer, and if we add more things or restructure what we have, is always very helpful. So yeah, sorry, I'm conscious that that's our time. I'm getting alarms going through my headset there.
Somebody asked about lavalier mics and said that they were getting a hissing sound from it, and drew the conclusion that it's good to test before you do. And I think that's a really good conclusion to come to. It's, you know, before you do the big interview with the person who you're not going to have access to all the time, do trial run and test the equipment. I don't think there's anything inherent about lavalier mics that would make them hiss. I mean, the other thing is that if I was doing recording, I would try and record somebody in different ways. So even if I'm recording using a camera with a microphone on it, I would maybe also use my phone and, you know, do something else, just in case something goes wrong on one of them, you've still got it on the other. Thank you, Tanya Gillespie. Okay. Yeah, it would be good to get feedback. We're going to be doing how-to. So if you have like you know, I want to know how to do A. If you had like specific things, or for the talk for the stuff that we've covered here, if you said, you know, oh, slide 48, could you expand on that? We'd be more than happy to do that, and we can record things. For people who say that they wanted to listen to, they were interested in the photography one, I think we do have a recording on that. Can we not put?
We do, yes. I will share the link. So I don't have that all uploaded yet, but I will. What I can do is just circulate it to everyone in this workshop, as well as the past one. So if that's something you're all interested in, so I will. I'm not going to have time to do that today. I don't work Thursday, Friday, so it will be next week. But I will send it around to everybody.
Facebook group, I think, is a good idea, because we can all chat on that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think you said that, Jen. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. So I said it for a Facebook group, just email me directly, or just put it on your feedback form if you are interested in that. Put a contact detail if you want, and we can create something. And again, I have through Eventbrite. So whatever email you use to register with Eventbrite, that's what I have to get in contact with you. So I can circulate that as well. I'll look into what the best format is. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming along, and hopefully you got something out of it. Thank you very much to Alan and Ian and Catherine for providing all of the content. And next week we have a workshop on video. So we'll, again, circle back to some of this of how do you take the audio and the image and put them together. So that was on the 2nd of June. I cannot believe it's June already. And so if you've not signed up for that, we have increased the places across all of the workshops because they were booked out, but they're not now. So if you want, please go and register on that. We have other ones as well. The following week, the 9th, we are taking a break, but then there's 3 more after that. So if you do want to join us, if you're not already signed up, you are very welcome. If this is your only workshop with us, thank you very much. Don't hesitate to get in touch.
Okay. And